The GMT tournament has reached its equator. Round 4 of the classical tournament is finished with 2 victories with the white color, 2 exciting draws. So let's have a look at some of the most interesting key moments in yesterday's games. We're going to start with the game of Daniel Bogdan-Diak playing against David Navara. Bogdan-Diak decided to stick to his English opening repertoire, c4, knight f6, knight c3, e5. Once again playing e3, the continuation he was playing against Vincent Keimer a couple of rounds ago. Bishop b4, queen b3. This time the remaining grandmaster changed his approach. Instead of knight g2, which was played in the aforementioned game, Navara immediately gave up the bishop, queen e7, clearly thinking about early d5, getting some sort of a reversed Scheveningen and Sicilian structure. h3 was played, d5, c takes on d5, knight e5, queen c2. Black very quickly castled, and now this position seemed very familiar, perhaps to some of the viewers, because we get a reverse Sicilian Khan, only white is playing it. Bishop g4, bishop b2, white very quickly developed the bishop on the long diagonal. Knight e7, bishop d3, another typical maneuver of the Khan. Knight f6. Navara was very solid, and although Diak tried to complicate matters, he was thinking about ideas like f4, short castle, maybe g4, g5. It was simply probably not meant to be. a5, very precise counterattack for black at the queen side. Knight g3, bishop g6. Here, the remaining grandmaster decided to take on g6, perhaps something he shouldn't have done, and kept the control of the f5 square. However, white doesn't really have any advantage. And then after bishop takes, h takes, b5. Here after a4, black already found a very nice target on the pawn on b5. Short castle, rook a5, bishop here, pawns were traded. And after rook b6, here the remaining grandmaster didn't find anything else but to repeat the position. So this probably marks the shortest game of the classical tournament so far. He could have continued the game. There was no need to repeat the position. For example, rook fb1 and try to utilize on the power of the Daxwa bishop. But then once again, Diak had a very long day the previous day. He defended a very difficult endgame against the Chinese grandmaster Yu Yanyi. So draw gives him a little time to rest and prepare for the next encounters in the GMT tournament. Jules Mussar playing against Amin Bassem. We saw yet another Ray Lopez Brea variation. This is what Amin Bassem had already played a couple of rounds ago against David Navara. They repeated the same line. h3, knight b8, one of the typical ideas of the Breyer, d4, knight e7, a4. Bishop b7, knight e2. And the only difference here is compared to what Bassem played against Navara, he opted for rook e8, bishop f8, g6, bishop g7. And you might remember, this is where Navara found this very interesting idea, bishop g5, bishop c1 went back. And as you already know, Navara won a very nice game. Here the Egyptian grandmaster tried something else. He played c5. After bishop c2, queen c7, knight f1, he opted for a different approach this time, traded the c-pawns, and was seeking a counterplay at the queen side. Bishop b1, quite a smart choice by white, keeping control of the e4 square. And here after b takes on a4, the Frenchman unleashed a new move. He played bishop d2, which is a novelty never played before, thinking about ideas to position the bishop on c3, perhaps at some point give the bishop a new role on this diagonal. E takes on d4 was a very committal choice by the Egyptian grandmaster. Knight takes on d4, and knight c5, it appears to be an accuracy. Bishop f8 probably was the better choice, thinking about to play either d5 or perhaps g6, bishop g7, and have a pretty decent game. Knight c5 feels though very logical, because not only attacks the pawn on e4, but also defends the pawn on a4. Knight f5 was a strong response. The pawn on e4 is taboo due to various queen g4 tracks at the end of the line. Knight b3, rook a4, knight e2, knight e7, queen d2, and at the end of the complications, white simply secured himself a pretty solid advantage. Why is that? Black has a weakness on d6, and he cannot take the pawn on e4. The game continued with rook c5, rook d4, rook e8, knight g3. Here, as you can see, white already is threatening to take on d6. He's thinking about some ideas at some point to play knight f5. Of course, not immediately because black can capture, and the white rook on e1 is hanging. So h5 was played by Bassem, threatening to play h4 at some point. b4, good move for white, rook e5, and f4, threatening to win material. Now here, Bassem had to play rook d5, which looks rather awkward, but again, e takes on d5 never is an option because the rook on e1 is hanging. Rook d5, bishop takes on d5, and here arose a critical moment. Engines like knight f5 first and then e5, but to be honest, e5 immediately makes also a lot of sense, at least from the human perspective. And white's idea is really simple. He attacks the knight on f6, and if the knight retreats, the black bishop on d5 is hanging. g6 was played, Bassem protected f5 square, and here we go very quickly to the critical moment. Rook e2, white protects the rook on e2 and is seemingly winning a piece, because now e takes on f6 becomes a prime threat. Queen h7 check was played, king h2, and h4, a mistake which could have cost Bassem the game. Apparently, he had to include d takes, f takes, and only then play h4. Now, the point is that after white's possible capture on f3, h takes on g3, probably white is not really in the mood to take on g3, because you can see the king's exposed, there's all kinds of checks and no safe shelter for the white king. After the game, Jules Massard said that he believed that after h4, a very strong move is knight f5, and this is also what the Egyptian grandmaster told, that he didn't like this move because after the pawn trade, he saw all kinds of ideas of queen h6, queen g7, and you can't really take it. There's queen g5 check, but engines remain merciless. They say queen c7, black is perfectly fine. So if white plays queen h6, knight h5, this is a move which was spotted in the post-game analysis. However, if white continues knight d6 and is careless, this can backfire because black can actually sacrifice a queen and become victorious because he has a very strong counterattack. Pretty sure this would have been noticed by both players at the point already. So instead of this, h4 was played immediately by Bassem, and the key idea here that both players rejected the obvious e takes on f6. Why is this? After h takes, king g3, rook e2, queen e2, apparently both of them missed that queen d4 is not such a good move. It seems that pawn on f6 cannot be defended. However, after the very nice, quiet move, queen d3, white forces the queen trade. As you can see, this queen cannot go to f6 or b4, because if black takes on b4, white captures, queen b1, there's a simple check on a8, queen f8, the mate on g7 is inevitable, and black only has one check on b3 or d3, and the white king simply escapes to h2. So knight f5 instead was played by the French champion following his idea, and he missed one idea which he was quite unhappy about in the post-game analysis. He intended to play knight e6, which he did play in the game, and the entire point here is that after f takes on e5, the Frenchman simply missed queen e7. So the point is, after e takes on f6, there's queen d6, intermezzo check, and white is in trouble, so he cannot do that. Queen f4 would leave the bishop on d5 unattacked, and black could just play knight h5, knight g3, and take over the game. So white had no choice but to repeat the position with knight c8, knight e6, and draw was agreed. The third game of the day was the reigning champion Kwang Liem playing against Arjun Rigaisi. For Liem, this was the chance to try to come closer to the overall rankings. For Arjun, the tournament so far has been going really disappointingly. Knight e7, rather rare move. Queen c2 here, the Vietnamese grandmaster decided to play a rather rare line. Bishop b4, a3, again, a very interesting choice by white. White takes on c3, establishes himself the bishop pair, and is thinking about some breakthroughs in the center at some point later. c5, e3, castles, bishop e2, queen c7, a4. All of this makes perfect sense. And here, the young Indian made a very committal choice. He played c4, which sometimes by a couple of players was dubbed as a potential mistake because it removes any tension from the center. Liem suggested perhaps c takes on d4 was necessary. Knight takes on d4, knight e5, and we have about balanced game. But again, if white managed to play either c4, e4, he might try to utilize the power of the two bishops. Now, instead, c4 was played, And after knight e2, white is dreaming about future scenario to play f3, e4, not only gaining the center, but also opening the docks with bishop on c1. After knight e2, b6, short castle, rook e8, rook e1, white is simply carrying out the idea. And here perhaps bishop b7 was the step in the wrong direction. Black had to play knight f8, knight g6, and think about organizing a kingside attack. And the bishop apparently better belongs on d7. It is really easy to say, of course, because the bishop on b7 at least tries to slow down white's idea to push f3, e4. So after knight f1, a6, f3, b5, bishop a3, black organized the pass pawn on the queen side. All of this makes sense. Okay, maybe rook b1 is a bit strange move. Sorry, I jumped back. So perhaps, yeah, indeed, rook b1 was a bit strange move. White could have continued to improve his position to put the bishop on c2. Rook b1, queen d2. Now Liam improved his bishop. Knight g3, bishop c2, bishop c5. This doesn't change much. And now already you can see e3, e4 is becoming a very serious threat. So black has to play h5, h4, counter this attack here. Rook e2, a4. And now, a very interesting moment here. So the Vietnamese grandmaster played rook e1, which appears to be a very logical move, because white is threatened to play e4. Apparently, not only the e4 square is one of the most important squares of the game, but it's also the c3 square. Apparently, he had to continue with queen e1, keeping a close eye on this square, and the black plays h4, knight f1, knight f2, followed by at some point e4, white keeps advantage. Now instead, the last year's champion played rook e1, and it could have backfired. If black had played h4, knight h1, knight a5, knight f2, knight b3, queen d1, and here's the key move, queen a5, which was pointed out by the Vietnamese grandmaster in the post-game analysis, attacking the pawn on c3, and after bishop b4, queen a8, not only black takes care of the e4 square, but also a3, a2, a1. He's too much of a big threat. It's difficult to say how the game would have continued on this occasion. Perhaps repetition of the position already is the best choice for both opponents. Now instead, here Arjun made a rather strange choice. He allowed white to play e4 with no resistance. Apparently he missed something, because after h4 white has a number of great choices. He can sacrifice a piece, go for a strong attack. The same idea is for knight f5, g takes, queen g5, and unleash a deadly attack at the king side. So after e4, black captured, knight e4, bishop e4, f takes on e4, and even with the naked eye, you can immediately see that apparently something has gone terribly wrong for black, because white has a strong pawn center, two bishops, and a potentially weak king. Queen b7 was played, and here probably it was the final chance for the young Indian, because like Wang Liam made a final mistake. He played queen f4. Giving black unexpected resource to play knight e5. Let's say knight e5, queen g3, knight c7. Not only attacking knight b5, let's say white will play rook f1 or rook f2. After knight b5, it's difficult to find a good square for this bishop, because bishop b4 would jump into knight takes on d4, leaving the bishop on b4 unattended. So instead, black played something else. He played king g7, missing this final chance to come back in the game. And now Liam would never again let his advantage slip away. He moved all of his pieces towards the king side. He rejected winning an exchange a couple of times. He could have done it here, bishop f5. He could have taken the exchange on e7. He decided that his bishops are simply stronger. And after bishop e4, it was simply too much for the young Indian to hold this position. This is a pin. There's a strong attack. There's all kinds of threats at the king side. And the game continued with just a couple of moves. King g8, queen f3, attack on f7, attack on d5. And after rook e8, bishop d6, black had to stop the clock as the threats become overwhelming. Nice victory for the reigning champion, scoring their third victory in 4 rounds. And of course, the most exciting, perhaps not the most exciting, the most important game for the overall rankings was the game of Vincent Keimer against Yu Yanyi. Now Vincent stuck to his typical choice of playing d4, c4. This time he chose a Catalan with knight c3, which is sort of a testing line at the highest level, because after knight e5, black has to know really precisely how to hold the position. It's either c5 or knight c6. The Chinese grandmaster chose c5. D takes, queen d1, knight d1, bishop c5. White doesn't rush to win back the pawn on c4 immediately. He played short castle, knight e5, and now this very tricky move, knight e3. And apparently it worked, because the Chinese grandmaster appeared to be unfamiliar with this position and burned a lot of time trying to figure out the details. He chose the wrong plan. He took on e3 and played knight c6, which in the end he probably would regret. What he could have done, he could have, of course, still take with the bishop here and play perhaps the more safer choice, c3. Not only to keep the pawn, but try to ruin White's pawn structure. After knight takes on e3, f takes on e3, f6 was a very nice move for black. Knight e3 followed by rook f7, rook c7, and black slowly continues his development. And of course, White has a tiny edge, but he is the one who has to be a bit careful because his pawn structure has seen better days. Now instead, as I already said, the Chinese grandmaster played knight c6, knight c4. He was never really in the mood to take on e3 because not only White can capture with the knight, also f takes on e3 looks interesting, followed by knight d6, a very powerful square, rook d1, rook c1, beautiful pieces for White, so difficult choice for black to make. Now instead, rook d8 was played, rook d1, b5, and here Keimer found a nice resource, bishop g5, freeing the e3 square for the knight. f6, knight e3, a great resource. Apparently, f takes on g5, knight e5, bishop d5 is just bad for black. Despite the fact he has two minor pieces for the rook, he is losing a couple of more pawns, and the endgame is very near, where the rook and two pawns probably should dominate the two minor pieces. Now instead, the Chinese grandmaster played knight e7, knight e5, knight e5, and during the commentary, we strongly suggest that bishop takes on f6. Now the point is, after g takes e4, bishop b7, it would seem that White gets a very nice rook endgame, takes, rook c1. But what apparently we missed, that black can play this very nice idea, d5, d4, sacrificing a pawn. The point is, king f1, d3, White can never play king e1 because black activates his pieces. Let's say rook c5, black plays rook d8, threatening to push forward this pawn. And after king e1, again, once again, there is rook e8 check. So Keimer made the right choice. He kept the bishops on the board. He played bishop d2, threatened to play bishop a5, e4. Black tried to hold on with the knight on d5. And from here, we started to see a lot of maneuverings. Keimer could have pressed e4 very quickly. In the end, he decided not to rush with this because he was trying to provoke a weakness from his opponent. And the Chinese grandmaster committed. Yeah, so you see this e4 threat is hanging in there. So black decided to play knight f6, a move which was criticized by Keimer in the post-game interview. He said this only allows White to crash through and give him the easier game. After trade, rook c6, White applies some pressure here. And moving a bit forward, White was improving the pressure quite a bit. And the critical moment arose here. King d6 probably already was the final mistake of the Chinese grandmaster. He should have played knight e5 and tried to hold on. But then again, White is thinking about e4, f takes, knight f6, king e3. And this position just looks incredibly unpleasant because bishop e3, bishop c3, bishop d4. The bishop is incredibly strong here, and this position will be quite tough for black to hold. After king d6, after a couple of accurate moves, White managed to create difficult to parry threats. The queen side is falling apart. And we perhaps could just fast forward to the critical moment here. After h5, Keimer fixed these weaknesses on g7 and h6, rook c6, rook a7, and black probably made the final mistake. g5 had to be played. Instead, the Chinese grandmaster played g6, which seems to be the same. Now the point is, rook f7 is incredibly strong. King e6 is impossible, and that's the difference. H takes on g6 is the possibility on the board. So after g takes, rook takes on f5. Black was seeking some counterplay at the queen side. It was not meant to be, because rook c2 simply never works due to rook takes on h6, and there is a mate threat on d6. There was nothing to be done, and the young German showed incredibly good skill to confidently hold this position to a logical victory. The Chinese grandmaster tried to complicate matters. He gave a couple of pawns, activating the king. King f1, rook c5, another nice trick by the German. Bishop b6, king d4, b4. White would simply force the rook trade. So the Chinese Grandmaster couldn't do that. He played rook b8, and now here Keimer found a mating net on the board. Rook d5, essentially sealing the deal of the game. Bishop dt is unstoppable threat. Knight h2, knight f3 changes nothing. Here, after a couple of moves later, Keimer was very precise, forcing a rook trade or pushing for the f6 pawn, forcing black to resign. So these are the results of round 4 classical tournament. Wang Liem scored 4 points against Arjun Rigaisi. Vincent Keimer bagged also 4 points against the top-seeded player Yu Yanyi. Jules Massard, Daniel Bogdan-Diak played draws against Amin Bassem and David Navarra, respectively. After 4 rounds in the classical tournament, combined with the rapid section, you can see that Keimer is in the charge of the tournament, 21 points. Navarra now has fallen to the second place, 8.5 points. Wang Liem keeps his chances alive to defend his title he won last year. He is climbing back to the top 3 with 17 points. Everybody else is slightly behind. The action will resume today with the Blitz tournament. All the players will play a Blitz tournament double round robin system of 14 rounds. The action starts at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. It might have big implications on the overall rankings, so don't miss it. Come back here, watch it live, and enjoy it.